I thought about actually changing this to where the sword would, like the tip of the sword would be covered up by the stones. But at the same time, I think this looks pretty good. Hey guys, it's Alex from 7th Hour Films, back again with Merlin. Last time on Merlin, we had the series premiere, The Dragon's Call, where a young man named Merlin went to Camelot and basically became the physician's assistant, if I can talk today. And it was revealed that he has magical powers, but that's not really good because King Uther Pendragon has put the kibosh on magic and stuff. And yeah, so he kind of has to keep his powers secret, but he did have to use them in order to save the Dick Prince, Arthur Pendragon, from being killed by a witch. And now Merlin is the new manservant of Dick Prince, Arthur Pendragon. Yeah, that's pretty much that. Yeah, it was interesting, it was fun, and I'm excited to see where we go from there. So yeah, this is where I say no spoilers in the comments whatsoever. Don't be a dick like Dick Prince Arthur Pendragon, and please don't ever take that out of context. Yeah, just no spoilers in the comments. With that being said, let's just get right into this episode of Merlin. Here we go. Hey guys, I just wanted to come on here and say that due to copyright issues, the reaction actually is not in this video. The reaction you want to watch is not in this video. But there is still a way of viewing it. If you go down in the description of this video, there is a link to Google Drive. It's nice, it's all good. And you can watch my 10-minute highlight reaction with the footage, completely free of charge. And yeah, you can go watch that, you can go enjoy it, and then when you're done with that, you can come back over to the YouTube video for the discussion. Yeah, that's pretty much that. See you guys there. Enjoy. Sorry about this. Okay. Alrighty. Another fun episode. I really enjoyed that. Ooh, that whole humiliating scene at the king's court. God, I always hate those kinds of scenes, but it had to be there. It did have to be there. So, man, I wrote more notes than I thought I would for a second episode, but hey, we're getting there. Alrighty, so with that said, let's go ahead and go over these notes. The first thing I wrote down was Snake/Knight Valiant. So, I can definitely see what this show is kind of going to be like, I think, at least for this first season. This is definitely, I can already tell this is an episodic show. It's not, I mean, technically, yes, there is an overarching story to each of these episodes, but at the same time, each episode, I would imagine, is going to be its own self-contained story, basically. Yes, stuff will carry over into the next episode and stuff like that, but every episode is going to be self-contained. It's a lot like Doctor Who. Doctor Who does that beautifully, I might add. So, I can definitely see that that's what Merlin is going to be. It's not, one story that's being, dragged out over a number of episodes, but instead, just, this is a day in the lives of the people of Camelot, basically. So yeah, which, that's fine. That's totally fine with me. I don't know if, maybe future seasons are going to become more serialized or not, but this is totally fine. I'm no stranger to these episodic shows with, Doctor Who. Torchwood was like that for the first 2 seasons. Sarah Jane has been like that the whole show, basically. So, yeah, anyway. So with all that, all it being, the show being very episodic, we do sort of have our villain of the week for each episode. For last episode, it was the witch, and now it's Knight Valiant. And it does seem like every single villain basically is going to have some relation to magic. That is kind of what I'm guessing at right now, is that there's always going to be some sort of magic involved. Last time it was just a witch, but she was using her singing in order to put everyone to sleep before she killed Arthur. And this time I really like the idea of this magic shield, basically, where the crest actually comes to life. And in this case, his crest was the three snakes. That's just the particular shield he had, with his now particular crest. And the snakes coming to life and biting his opponent during a fight secretly, very secretly, were doing it very close, so like no one can really see what's happening. And because of that, they get hit by poison, so they are knocked out of their fight, basically. And if you don't have the antidote, they die, basically. Which it does suck for Knight Ewan, that he did still die in the end, because the snake got to him. The snake got back to him, basically. But I understand why they did that. I understand why they did that, because, they had to have it to where it's like, okay, well, there has to be some reason why this doesn't work on their attempt to, convince the king, basically. So, yeah. I wrote down the tournament. I thought that was actually really cool. Just for one episode, having this tournament of champions, basically, to find a new champion of Camelot. But there wasn't really, I don't know, it's just interesting. It's like, I almost feel like, well, what was the occasion? Like, why are we holding a tournament? It's like, we're just holding a fucking tournament. Like, whatever. So, yeah, I like that, and I feel like they showed enough of it, because, a tournament, you have to go through all these fights, and, because there's a bracket with all the people that are fighting and stuff like that. They did highlight the ones that really needed highlighting. We didn't just go through a montage, and then suddenly we're at Arthur versus Valiant. But it did take time, and it was over, 3 days and stuff like that. So the first day to get through all of round 1, and then round 2, and then the finals, basically. So that was interesting. I really like the way they sort of, I guess, dragged out the tournament, but just to fit over the episode, and you could still do stuff in between, and, you could do a lot in between, the different days and stuff like that. I liked it. I wrote down Arthur and Merlin. Merlin is getting better at his job. He's getting better about being a servant to Arthur. He wasn't really good at first, but at the same time, he didn't have any experience doing that. He did it to the best he could, and yes, he did forget the sword, but at the same time, he got everything on pretty well. Like, I was kind of worried in that first fight, like, something was like, maybe his like shoulder armor was gonna fall off, because like, oh, Merlin didn't get it on just right or something like that. But everything stayed on. It was nice and good. And then as he went on, he was getting a lot better at it. So I like that he is getting better, and Arthur is starting to appreciate that. He's seeing like, okay, this guy can get better. This is not the worst thing in the world that he's my servant. And even Merlin is like, okay, this isn't the worst thing in the world that I'm his servant, because, basically he's basically thinking like, okay, well, I'm really just, scrubbing his armor and stuff like that, which he immediately was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna use magic for that, which Gaius does not like. Gaius was not appreciative of like the different ways Merlin used his magic, really just for menial tasks. And not even that, like, when there was just like a book across the table and he just used magic to bring it closer to him. Granted, anyone with magic would do that, and I will say, Merlin using his magic in order to, basically do his chores, clean up all of clean up all of Arthur's armor and his tunic, and to sharpen his sword. Honestly, I feel like that's more okay. Like, I'd be more okay with that. Him just, I don't know, something about him just bringing that book closer. It's like, okay, just get up and go get it. It's like, yes, I understand why he's doing it, but at the same time, it's like, come on, man, it's just go get it. So, yeah. I wrote down stay secret. That is sort of the thing, is that Merlin really does need to figure out how to solve these things on his own. He needs to learn how to solve these problems on his own, which he did do that, last episode, when, the witch started to sing, and, he closed his ears, and then he used his magic to bring down the chandelier, and then to get Merlin Arthur out of the way. So that's the thing. He did save the day in a secretive way, but this time he decided to, get more people involved, basically. He did tell Arthur, which was good. It was good to tell Arthur, just to let him know, hey, like, I'm working on this, like, we're trying to fix this, but this dude has, actual real magic snakes on his shield. So it's good to tell that to Arthur, but it did, taking it to Uther, I mean, it was a good idea. It was a good idea because they had Ewan, and they were giving him the antidote. He was coming around. They just didn't account for him being killed, basically, being murdered by one of the snakes. Which means that snake fully came out, like, he sent that snake off early, like, before the court, just to be sure that Ewan would be dead. And it's also interesting that, I was kind of thinking when Merlin actually cut the head off of one of the snakes and it died, and then he took it back with him, I kind of figured it would be an interesting little visual cue that one of the snakes is actually missing on his shield. But that didn't end up being the case. He still had all 3 snakes on his shield, but then when he was fighting Arthur, only 2 of them came out because the third one was dead. So he can't just spawn unlimited snakes, basically. But I thought that would actually be an interesting sort of visual cue that maybe would get, that probably wouldn't be enough proof for Uther to lock him up or execute him or whatever. But that would be sort of a thing where it's like, okay, there's not enough proof, but Arthur and Merlin are onto something. Like, something is up with this. Because, that would have just been interesting. Like, if that was a visual cue, it's like, well, here's my shield, and Uther's like, shouldn't there be 3 snakes on here? And so now everyone's just suspicious of Knight Valiant. I'm not saying that they would, I'm not saying that would be, hard and fast proof, but that could make everyone suspicious, basically. So, yeah. And yeah, I thought cutting off the head of the snake was very, very interesting. Just doing that. Yeah, and then taking that back to use as an antidote. That made sense. That whole allegation scene. Oh, that was so tense. Because it's like it's like going to the principal's office. I always say that. I always said that about, like, when someone was, like, taken before the king or queen in Game of Thrones. It's like, yeah, you have to go in front of the principal. So it definitely was that, but it was a problem because, it's not just that, oh, well, they have no proof, so whatever. But they have no proof, and now Arthur looks like a coward. He looks like he was trying to just, disqualify this guy instead of fight him. But so that's why he had to keep going anyway. He was like, yes, I will die if I do this, and we can't do anything about these snakes. but I still have to fight, basically for his honor. It's his own pride that was now on the line in that fight. Before that, it's like, okay, if he had lost the fight, like, let's say he just lost the fight, but he didn't die, which is what the king is thinking, basically. It's like, okay, well, if Arthur loses the fight, and if he loses the fight, well, he won't die, but he will, it will be, kind of embarrassing, but it's not the end of the world. It just means it just means he needs to improve. He's still a young man, but if he did all that, sorry, got an email, distracted me. But if he did all this, if he brought forth the allegations, he brought forth the allegations, and they were unfortunately unfounded because he didn't have any proof. So it's a huge knock on his pride. And if he did withdraw, that would be an even bigger knock on his pride, his honor, basically. And so he had to go through with it, even if it meant he was going to die, because, basically, even if he died in combat, he would have died with his honor intact, basically. For the most part, I think. So yeah, that whole scene was just so tense. And, credit to, what is it, Anthony Head? Isn't that the name? Isn't that the name of Uther? Yeah, Anthony Head. Man, this guy is intense, I have to say. That it is important for every monarch. Like, for some reason, there always comes a scene where the monarch has to, say, hey, he basically has to be stern. And that was really good. That was really good. It was very intense. And I felt so bad because it's like, oh, this is so bad. Not just for Merlin, but for Arthur. Like, this totally, because he trusted Merlin, basically. So, yeah. I wrote down the dragon and destiny. We had another chat with the dragon about, Merlin's like, it can't be my destiny. How am I supposed to do this? And it is definitely like, I don't know. It's almost like a fault. It's almost like a fault for the dragon to tell him about his destiny. It's like, well, maybe you could see it as both. It's kind of like, it's like it's a fault because, now he's going to doubt himself a lot. He keeps saying, no, this can't be right. Rather than, if it is his destiny, just let him go without even knowing. He's gonna do it anyway if that's his destiny, which is why destiny sucks. Destiny's it's a bit of a boring concept when it comes to plot, but we're gonna talk about that in just a second. So, you could have just not told him and he would have been fine, but I will also say, telling him about his destiny is kind of a motivator, which is actually interesting. It was kind of a motivator for him because, he was like, all right, if it is my destiny, I guess I need to do something. So, and then he did do something about it. So, that's interesting. It's like, on the one hand, it's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't tell him about his destiny because he doubts himself. But at the same time, now that he knows it's his destiny, he will figure this out. And he will anyway because it's his destiny. So, yeah. But, on that, let's talk about Morgana a bit. Morgana had a vision, which is interesting. She had a vision of Arthur dying in battle. Dying in his fight with Knight Valiant. So, she had a vision of that, which did not come true. But I did notice that there were some shots, like, I feel like in her vision, there was the shot where, you just see him stab downward, and it's presumed that he stabbed Arthur right through the chest and killed him, which is what she was so afraid of. But what we saw in the actual fight was he stabbed down and Arthur got out of the way. He dodged out of the way. Dodge! Not the point. But yeah, so her vision, I guess her visions could be open to interpretation, and she took it as, well, Arthur is going to die. Whereas it's like, well, no, Arthur will just be in a bad situation and he needs to get out of it, basically. But Morgana had a vision. So if you take it as she had a vision of Arthur's death, does that actually mean that destiny can be rewritten, basically? Ooh, that would be so great if they got into that. Which is one of the greatest things I think about Doctor Who, is that, there are some time travel shows. There are some time travel shows where it's like, okay, this is a fixed point in time, which, yes, does happen on Doctor Who. They say this is a fixed point in time. Nothing should mess with this. But the difference is, on Doctor Who, they do specifically say the future is constantly being rewritten. Like, everything is being rewritten at all times, basically. So even if something was a fixed point in time, it can still be reversed. We've seen that on Doctor Who, when the Doctor, will change an event that's so, focal to the timeline, and he'll change it. But then other people will change it back. So that's the thing, is that what if that's actually what's happening here? What if that's sort of what Morgana's visions are? Okay, maybe some people see, maybe the dragon sees the future as, well, this is destiny, Because, first off, how the hell does he know that? How does a dragon see the future? That's what I want to know. But what if the dragon sees the future and he's like, okay, this is exactly what's going to happen. Merlin's going to become this great sorcerer. Arthur's going to become the king. All of this is going to happen the way I saw it. Then Morgana comes in, has her visions, and it's like, well, those differ. Those differ a bit. So it's like, okay, well, which do we take? The dragon's, prophecy, basically. Do we take the dragon's prophecy, or do we take Morgana's visions? Which one do we take? And the thing is, if the two contradict each other, then the only way that we can know is just by watching the show, basically. Just letting events unfold the way they do. Either they go by Morgana's vision, so in this case, Arthur dies, or we go by the dragon's prophecy, basically. The dragon's prophecy, where Arthur will still live and become the king of the Albions. Unite all the Albions. He'll be king. So yeah, in this case, we went more with the dragon's prophecy, but I'm wondering if we'll actually start to contradict it with Morgana's visions. I think that would actually be really interesting. This interesting dynamic, which one is correct, and the only way we can really tell is just by letting these events unfold and then basically comparing notes later. Plus, there's also the possibility that neither of them are right. That, events will happen not as the dragon, not in the dragon's prophecy and not in Morgana's visions. So yeah, because that's the thing is, like we said, it's possible that, what Morgana saw actually happened, but she just misinterpreted it as Arthur being killed. What if the great dragon does misinterpret the prophecy, basically? So yeah, that would be an interesting dynamic, and I hope the show kind of plays on that a bit. I don't know why else they would introduce Morgana having visions. So yeah, Morgana gets more interesting with every episode. Last episode, she seemed like such a mystery, because it's like, I was just curious about, her history. It's like, okay, so she's the ward of King Uther, and, kind of seems like she has the hots for Arthur, but it's cool because they're not siblings or anything. She just lives with them, basically. And it's like, okay, so that's interesting. Then we're starting to add on these visions and stuff like that. So Morgana is kind of becoming the most interesting character just because I don't know what the hell is going on with her. So yeah. I wrote down spell, dog, and snakes. So it took me a minute to actually get what they were trying to do, because it's like, he took the statue and it's like, okay, is he trying to turn it into a real dog? And I was like, okay, why would you need to do that? I'm so stupid. I was like, why would you need to do that? And then suddenly it hit me, oh, duh. Like, duh, he was practicing. He was trying to see if he could make the spell work. And then, if he could use that on the snakes. Bring the snakes out. And then Knight Valiant would be exposed. So, that was interesting. We had the fight between Arthur and Valiant, which was also pretty good. And I do kind of like that, Arthur is just so good that he can beat Valiant in a straight fight. So, which is why he got the snakes in the first place. Valiant got the snakes because he knew he would end up facing Arthur, and he couldn't beat Arthur in a regular fight. Granted, he couldn't beat a couple of knights in a straight fight. Well, specifically, Ewan. So, that's also interesting, that it's like, okay, he is a decent fighter, but he's not quite good enough, basically, to make it past the semifinals. And then, go all the way and beat Arthur. So, that's interesting. And it's also interesting that as young as Arthur is, he is that good. But, he's had good training. He's the prince. Probably got the best trainers in the world. And then the last thing I wrote down was Arthur and Morgana. Man, they're just... Their relationship is like, all right, I can see what we're doing here. Is this? I guess it's sort of a will they, won't they sort of situation between Arthur and Morgana, but I kind of hope they don't. I kind of hope they don't, because I feel like Morgana can do better. Like, yeah, I feel like Morgana can do better than Arthur. Probably better than Merlin too. I don't know if they're gonna try doing that. I don't know. I can see more of a thing between Merlin and Guinevere, which is weird because that's not. I don't know. I guess I don't know enough of Arthurian legend to really comment on that, but I'm pretty sure Guinevere is supposed to be Arthur's queen, so they may need to work on that a bit. But yeah, but that was a little funny at the end, and then Arthur going to Merlin to complain about Morgana. And it's like, yeah, they're bros now. They're cool. So, yeah, that's interesting. They're already bros, basically. So yeah, that's actually interesting. I like that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wrote. Another great episode, and I'm curious to see where we're going after this. So yeah, that's pretty much that. With all that being said, I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of my Merlin reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you later.